In this video, 1 car, 2 car, red car, blue car. Welcome back to the wonderful world of the Pittsburgh line. I'm having so much fun railfanning this line. It's leagues better than the Amtrak Hartford line or the CSX Berkshire line back home. No discredit to those lines, and I still love them, but the Pittsburgh line is totally awesome. Exhibit A. I had some time in between classes to come catch NS 90G, the track geometry train. This brick of a train, it's literally called the brick, analyzes and assesses the quality of the track below it. I'm sure you guys already know what most of this is. You guys are smart, right? Right? Later that day I got word that 8025, the Monongahela Heritage Unit, would be coming through town, so I went down to the tracks to catch it, where first we saw a helper set getting detached from a manifest and following very close behind it, which is unusual for me, but I bet it's a normal operation for NS. Once that had cleared, it was time for the main show. 8025 was coming on the garbage train. 8025 was literally pulling garbage. 8025 ducked under the 12th Street crossover and came into view, and I want to remind you, 8025 is supposed to be gray, like this. The 8025 we got was light brown at best. Gosh, what a garbage train. The next day I came out to the tracks to catch a broken down Amtrak 42 being pulled by a -9. But before we could get to that, I had to wait for an empty coal to pass with an ACE and an ET44 AC leading, and a DT44 AC with an AC44 C6M as mid DPUs. And after hearing horns coming from Porter Road, also called the Brickyard Road, which is a crossing just east of Altoona, I knew the Amtrak was on its way. Now, while I was getting this shot, my camera decided to have a seizure and jolt to the side twice. Here's jolt 1, and jolt 2. I know that this is a problem with the gimbal stabilization because my camera has an internal gimbal that physically holds my lens steady, but sometimes it can act up on me like this, for example, which ruined my shot of the broken Amtrak slightly. Anywho, later that same day we went out to try and catch 8099, the Southern Heritage Unit. We chose to go down to Gallitzin because the train had already been reported at Tyrone with not only 8099, but a 7-engine consist including a CSX engine. The first train we saw at Gallitzin was an intermodal that came by at peak sunset time. We were watching the Horseshoe Curve Cam and we hadn't seen 8099 go by yet, so we started to get a little worried that it wasn't going to come by until after dark. But we persisted and caught another westbound intermodal coming out of the west portal. By now, we were thinking that we really should have seen the Southern. Well, we later learned that the train 8099 was on had worked Rose Yard for hours and hours, and the train went by long after we were gone at midnight. At this time, this was the 4th time that 8099 had evaded us. The first 3 times it had snuck by us through Altoona without any of us either noticing it was coming or having time to catch it. Undeterred, we were back the next day with new targets in mind. 1072, the Illinois Terminal, and 8098, the Conrail Heritage Units, each on a westbound and eastbound respectively. First up was a westbound empty coal, followed by Amtrak 43 heading west to Pittsburgh. Amtrak engine number 98 has been plaguing us for weeks now. What I mean is, every single Amtrak we see has Amtrak engine number 98. We are currently 7 for 12 on there being any other engine other than 98 on either Pennsylvanian. We cannot get away from this engine. Anyway, we thought that this intermodal was going to block 1072 because we had already seen 1072 on the curve cam coming our way. But we were relieved when it stopped short of the tunnel. Also, while waiting for 1072 to come, a nice little sunset was developing. Then we heard the horns for 1072's train and it was showtime. 1072 passed right by the stopped intermodal, leading to a stationary meet during a pretty good sunset. Once 1072 passed, the stopped intermodal got fired back up again and continued heading east. Then a 3rd intermodal came by when the sun was at its most golden light, creating another amazing sunset shot. By this point, after 1072 had passed, we were waiting on 8098, the Conrail unit, to come by as a mid-DPU on NS 18M. Next, we retreated to yet another 2-way meet at sunset. A manifest came up to meet the eastbound intermodal while this amazing sunset was still going on. After this train had cleared, and after waiting a good little bit, we heard engine rumblings coming from nearby Crescent. After looking on the Crescent cam, we verified that the train coming east was 18N, but right as we were doing that, we heard horns coming from the east side of the Gallitzin tunnels. That's when we knew that we were getting a meet. I set up in the best possible place to catch a meet and still see the sunset. 18N rounded the corner, and out of the corner of my eye I saw that the westbound had exited the portal, and thus we have my first perfect meet. This shot was amazing. It was under an amazing sunset, one of the trains involved had a heritage unit on it, and it's in focus. So anyway, we saw the lights for the mid DPU of 18N, so I recorded it from the west side of the bridge and teleported to the other side and definitely didn't run right in front of a red Corvette convertible that was coming up the road. And yes, I can teleport, that's totally real, don't think about it too hard. That weekend we planned to go chase the Everett Railroad's ice cream train excursion, which would have Everett Railroad number 11, a 260 mogul type steam locomotive leading. First, we met up in Crescent, where we found a manifest with a GP38-3 trailing, which was a nice surprise. For the next train, I once again felt like getting creative with my shot angle and set up my camcorder on the fence lining the Crescent Railfan Park with some shrubbery filling out the right side of the frame as a contrasting foreground subject to the train in the midground. Sorry, I got a bit too camera technical there. After this, we headed over to the Everett Railroad and set up for our first shot, and it was fucking pouring. Yep, here it is in all its glory, everyone. My first video of a moving steam engine, taken from under a blanket I was holding draped around my head to shield my camera from the rain while standing in a horrible spot to film the train with people in my way, and the blanket covering some of the video half the time. Thankfully, the rain held off for when 11 was arriving in roaring spring. This shot is one of my favorite shots recently, number 11 coming around on the high embankment with every surface around it appearing more reflective than normal because of the rain, and 11's smoke discoloring some of the cloudy sky. After this, the people on the excursion train got off, ate their ice cream, walked around the town a bit, and then 11 reversed back to the siding where it would run around the train and pull it backwards to Hollidaysburg. I passed my train on my way to the next spot I wanted to shoot at in my car. The storm above us was putting out a good amount of lightning, so I was hoping that as the train was going by there would be a lightning strike, but of course when you want lightning it doesn't come. So I was left with a shot of number 11 where number 11 took up a tiny portion of the bottom right corner of the screen. But I significantly made up for it with my next shot where I stopped by this little farm next to the tracks and got this amazing shot of some horses running along with the train. This is definitely in my top 10 best shots of 2024.
Video foreshadowing.
Then I set up by the intersection of Loop Road and River Road to get number 11 coming around the tight curve. Once again, I was hoping for a lightning strike and didn't get one. Driving back to the station, I passed number 11, but since there was nobody behind me, I decided to pace number 11 all the way back to the station. And yes, I know the train is quite backlit in this shot, and some would say that this is a bad thing for the shot, but in my opinion, I like it. It makes the shot look like it's a silhouette against the stormy sky, casting a strong amount of light onto it. Plus, the backlit-ness gives the shot some uniqueness points. Long story short, I don't hate this shot like most people would, but I do want to try and recreate this shot with better lighting just so I can do it the right way. Once the excursion train had arrived in Hollidaysburg and after checking heritage units, we decided to go over to the crossing at Stetter Road to catch Amtrak 43, which on this day had 2 private cars and NS 8098, the Conrail solo leading an auto rack train. First up was the Amtrak that came flying through with said private cars in tow. Now, I'm gonna stop the video right here. Do you notice anything? Maybe the NS train coming up immediately behind the Amtrak? Good job, you noticed it. The same could not be said for me in the moment because I panned to the right and stayed focused on the Amtrak and I didn't even understand the warning from my friend. It wasn't until I heard the horns behind me that I realized that there was a train coming up from behind me. After one more westbound intermodal, a car pulled onto a gravel pull-off on the opposite side of the crossing and one of the rail fans over there walked way too far down the tracks to be considered still on the gravel pull-off and was definitely trespassing. We knew that 8098 would be there soon, so when an eastbound intermodal came by, we were hoping that it would block the trespasser from seeing 8098. But sadly, the eastbound intermodal cleared before 8098 came through. And speaking of 8098, here is 8098 flying through town. We were planning on chasing 8098, but the road we needed to get out was on the other side of the crossing, but regardless, we beat it down to 10th Ave where we got a nice horn salute. We then beat it to Crescent as the sun started going down and we got another horn salute, mainly because there were some children on the rail fanning platform that were doing the blow the horn arm signal thing. After this, we went to Vito's, which is a local Italian restaurant. The food was pretty good, and by the time we got out it was dark, and we already saw the headlights of a westbound, so we decided to stay and catch it. Once the power for that was gone, we saw that some of the intermodal containers were glowing, which meant that there was another westbound that was coming in behind the intermodal. Since there was a green signal, we decided to wait for that train and then go home. Well, not before another westbound intermodal came by, and then we got our eastbound, which was just another intermodal. After this, the rest of the gang went home and I stayed in Crescent for a little bit because I wanted to check out what the lighting was like on the other side of the Y, because there were some pretty powerful lights that would illuminate a train if you stood on the hill that overlooks the Crescent Y, I thought. Well, the lighting situation is okay. You can see the engine's detail a little bit better, but it's not as good as I was hoping. On the back was a fresh AC44C6M pushing off into the night. After this, I was going to go home, but I got sidetracked when I heard horns while passing Gallitzin and accidentally caught these lights coming out of the Gallitzin tunnels. That would be the unintentional finisher for another great rail fanning day. There are so much more stories to tell, but I'm going to cut it off here because this video is getting too long. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go put out the fire coming out of my laptop. Thank you for watching, have a wonderful day.